Welcome to a special London Country with my guest, Hoyt Axton. Everybody's going on the road. Well, it gives me pleasure. He's on the road at the moment, but he's stopped by to visit us on this recorded London Country. Hoyt Axton, good morning and welcome.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's good to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. I've been a fan of your music for a very long time. Seen your show a few times, including once in Nashville when you, unfortunately, there wasn't a great... It was a Halloween night, I remember that. And... Townes Van Zandt and Jerry Jeff Walker. Do you remember this gig? About 78, I think.
I remember that. We didn't draw much.
No, we had more people on stage than in the audience.
I think we did.
But it was a great night, though. It was marvelous sort of people turned up. That's a great thing about Nashville. And everyone lives there, and on gigs like that, they turn up, don't they? And sort of jam.
We did have a good time on stage.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. Good music.
Thank you.
Right, of course, well, as we'll be talking about later, you're sort of steeped in the music business, and I suppose you were sort of brought up in the music business in a sense, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Because your mother, of course, as we'll hear later, as most people know, is a famous writer. Was this an advantage or a disadvantage? Was it? Does it make you feel lazy after a while that, you've sort of got a foot in the door that other people...
You know what? It did affect the way I approached my career, per se. Because what I didn't want to be tied to mother's coattails, So I left Tennessee and Oklahoma and the Deep South traditions. I left there and went to New Orleans, went up to Chicago and New York City and went to California early on. Because I knew I was going to be a little crazy for the first 10 years, and I figured that I didn't want to impugn my mother's good reputation. So I kind of took off and just footloose and fancy-freed it there for a while.
Yeah. Well, the whole show actually will be, of course, around your career, and not only your singing, but, of course, your writing, which many people recorded your songs, many in the pop side as well as the country side. And here's a guy who's done three. In fact, I believe you produced this album. You did, didn't you? By Commander Cody.
I enjoyed that. We had a good time.
Yes, he's been on the show. He's a nice guy. Tales from the Ozone.
He's crazy,
Is he crazy?
George Frayne? Of course he's crazy.
Yes, I did get the impression. I'm a gentleman, you see. I don't tell you things like that. Paid in Advance, we're going to start off by playing.
I love that song.
It's a good song, isn't it?
Fun song. And that song was very difficult to write. It must have taken upwards of 35, 40 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, it was that. Well, you know,
that's when you were serious about your music, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, I was serious. I take the easy way out, Bob. I never modulate. When I write, actually, I just write little folk songs. I write verse, chorus. Sometimes I'll write two verses in a row, and then a chorus, and then an instrumental, and then a verse, and a chorus, and a tag.
Right. Do you do, to be serious about it, do you do a Harlan Howard? I mean, he writes 6 songs at a time, for instance, he told me.
No.
You don't do that?
I'm an organic songwriter. I write when the muse comes down out of heaven and hits me upside the temple with her little silver tuning fork and says, write a song, Hoyt.
And the result is something like this, right?
Yep.
Paid in Advance there by Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen, produced and written there by Hoyt Axton. Have you been doing a lot of producing, Hoyt? Or?
No, not really. I've been producing my own things for quite a while.
Yeah.
I think that the quality of my records will bear that out. You get too close to the trees, you can't see the forest sometimes when you produce your own things.
Yeah, but I found, maybe I've been in the studio with the wrong producers, but I found the Nashville producers I've been in with, they don't seem to actually do anything. Maybe they do it all afterwards, but it seems to be the musicians who seem to be doing the work. I don't know. I get that impression anyway.
I think you're right.
Or is it, because you don't actually, do you record in Nashville?
No, I have a little 16-track studio in my home in Lake Tahoe, California, up in the mountains. And I've been recording there for 4 years now.
Is that sort of on the border of Lake Tahoe, Nevada, or am I getting mixed up again?
Yeah.
So it's near
Lake Tahoe is 2/3, and there's about a 74-mile perimeter circumference around the lake. And 1/3 of it's in Nevada, 2/3 are in California. The altitude of the lake is 6,280 feet or something. So it's a mile up there,
Right. So
I love it.
How far are you from the slot machines?
I don't gamble, so I'm as far away as you can get.
Well, we're going to play a track now, Hoyt Axton, which is, as Walter Matthau said on the Johnny Carson show a few weeks ago, it's an early. And this is Hoyt Axton with the Billy Bible Blues Band.
Mm-hmm.
Is this one of your first recordings?
No, my first recording, as a matter of fact, the guitar player working with Willie Nelson, Grady Martin, played on my very first record in the summer of 61.
Right.
I did an old slave song, an escape song, that the slaves had a route out of the Deep South. And they said, how do you get to the north? And they said, follow the drinking gourd, which was the Little Dipper, I guess.
Oh.
And as long as they followed the Little Dipper, they would escape from the Deep South. This is before the Civil War, I guess, or during it.
Oh. But this is actually one of your... this is, I think...
this is pretty close to the beginning. I think this was done in 65, 66, somewhere in there.
And this is one of your own composition, 10,000 Sunsets. Do you remember how this goes, this song, or is it...
10,000 sunsets... no, I don't.
Better play it then. Just say what you said about that, Hoyt.
I said it's a shame that some of these early records don't self-destruct after 3 or 4 years.
Well, I think they're quite interesting because you were saying that as soon as it started, those were sitar days, and it sort of had a lot of what was going on at the time, didn't it? So,
I guess so. I thought it did at the time. It was a mistake, Bob. Okay, we all make mistakes.
How much did you record for this company, Cold Gems, which was part
Cold
of
Gems was Screen Gems Columbia. I wrote for 3 years for Screen Gems Columbia Music.
Uh-huh.
During that time, we had a total of maybe 4 songs recorded by other people. And I remember every year they would re-sign me, and I'd say, why are you re-signing me, you know? And they'd say, well, kid, we figure you're either ahead of your time or out of phase. I said, we're speculating. If you're ahead of your time, we'll get ours down the line. If you're out of phase, that's showbiz.
Strange. Well, here's a great song of yours, and this is by a young man who, as we recorded this, is touring over here, Jimmy Payne.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a fair country hit for him. Didn't get to the very top, but it did well. Has anybody else had this as a big record? Sweet Fantasy, I'm talking about.
I don't remember this song.
Oh, I hope you wrote it.
I did write it, yes.
It's a great song. You really kidding?
Was that the one about... I think Glenn Campbell may have done this song, too.
Let me check my list here. If
Check
I've got
that
it by
list,
him.
Bob.
Yeah. I don't think I got it by him, actually. I got it. Yes, you're right. He did do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glenn did a pretty good job. I've never heard Jimmy Payne's version of this.
Would you like to hear it? Sir?
I'd love to.
Here we go. Well, Sweet Fantasy there. Now you've heard it by Jimmy Payne.
I like it.
Does a good job, doesn't he?
Not bad.
Have you recorded it yourself?
Yeah, I did record it.
But it's not obviously one you do on stage.
As a matter of fact, I recorded it here in England.
Did you, by George?
Pardon me.
Yes.
Yeah, I came over here in '69,
Uh-huh.
and a fellow named Bob Johnston was producing Lindisfarne at the same time.
Right.
And came over and hung out with Chris Blackwell from Island. Then we went down to Island Studios. Bob and I did. I spent about a week here just partying. And I was in great shape by the time I got in the studio. And I did everything at half speed. You know, I was worn out. Unfortunately, they couldn't VSO, like turn the knob and make everything go faster to the proper speed, because I would have sounded like a chipmunk. But we did an album called Less Than the Song, and it was, a nice little album.
Oh.
He did that in a strange way. I cut the album with my playing piano and singing or playing guitar and singing. 6 months later, Bob Johnston takes that tape back to Los Angeles and puts the background voices on. Oh. 3 months after that, he took it to Nashville and put the bass and the guitars. And, it was done backwards.
Yeah.
Normally, you do the basic track first and then...
Were you pleased with the way it came out?
I liked the album. Oh. I really did.
Well, okay, this one probably more people have recorded than any others of yours. I, of course, my collection is a country collection rather than pop, but I know this Joy to the World was a big hit for Three Dog
Night.
Right. Was it a million seller?
I guess it sold altogether about 3.5.
Wow.
And I don't know whether that's inclusive of all the different cover versions and all that.
Yeah.
I just got a bunch of money off it, Bob. They gave me a bunch of money, and I spent it and had a good time.
Do you still get a bit from it?
Still get a bit.
Good. Well, among the people who recorded it are a country singer not too well known called Nancy Adams, Lynn Anderson, much better known, a British group called Nashville Sounds, and another guy we might be playing later on, but first Conway Twitty, the version he's recorded, of course.
I didn't know Conway had done this song.
Oh, really? Well, he has.
Well, thanks, Conway.
Yeah, Joy to the World. Well, another one you hadn't heard before, and you liked it, didn't you?
I like it.
Conway Twitty doing your song, Joy to the World.
Oh, thank you, Conway.
Does it country? Which,
yeah, he does.
What gave you the idea of this song, which, as you said, did well for you?
Well, this is funny. There was a period of time, every once in a while you'll go into a studio, you'll rent a cheap studio, and get some friends and go in and cut some demos of your songs, and then you'll make cassettes and send them out to various artists, see if they're interested. And that's what this was all about. We went into a little 8-track studio for $25 an hour in Tarzana, California, and we had recorded for 2 hours and 40 minutes, I guess, right? And my old bass player, with whom, incidentally, I later co-wrote the No, No, No song that Ringo Starr did, David Panhard Jackson Jr. His mama was a Jelly Roll Morton kind of piano player in honky-tonks. So David had grown up in the business, so to speak. And David looked around and he said, hey, how about that song? I'd been working 3 or 4 months. I'd had that phrase, the chorus, Joy to the World, all the boys and girls. And I had the melody for the regular verses, but I didn't have any verses. I'd tried a few things and it didn't work. And he said, why don't you finish that song? I said, it's not finished. He said, well, we'll go ahead and lay the musical track down. He said, just write anything. And then later you can come back in and put, when you write real lyrics, you can put them on there. So I said, okay, man. So I just leaned over, had a drink of wine. They had some wine there that was going to spoil if we didn't drink it. And I had a little drink of wine, and I just leaned over on this Leslie speaker that they had for this Hammond organ in the studio, and I said, oh, Jeremiah was a bullfrog. I mean, they were temporary lyrics. Right. And before I could rewrite them, Three Dog Night heard the song and cut it, and it was a big hit. So,
really?
Yeah, they weren't supposed. Those lyrics were going to be temporary.
Good Lord. Well, that's amazing. Well, we go from one of your most famous to, I think, one of your best, too. Now, I haven't got bony fingers, and you certainly haven't. But so, you're going to say
what about the song?
Yeah.
Well, it was a girl named Renee Armand. She was a great singer. Just hell to get along with, but she sang in my band. And we were sitting around one night eating popcorn, drinking tequila. And my lady...
Or it would spoil.
My lady friend at the time, actually, my lady friend with whom I was living was a Playboy bunny. The little girls with the little cottontails and little ears.
Yes, I've heard of it.
And she was in the kitchen, and she was having trouble fixing dinner. Playboy bunnies are not really necessarily that domestic. And she was a wild one, a wild bunny. And Renee and I were working on this song, and this girl... Mary Jo Alder was her name. She yells out of the kitchen. She says, you work your fingers to the bone. What do you get? Bony fingers. So I just said, great, and I just put it right in the song. Mary Jo didn't get the credit. Renee and I ended up as co-writers on the song, but Mary Jo later got some nice furniture and 2 cars out of the relationship, so I guess she did okay.
I was tempted to say you should have pitched it to Eddie Rabbit, but I won't. Bony fingers, lovely. You were saying when I was playing Hoyt Axton, what happened to the bunny girl? Aren't you going to tell me all of it?
Oh, the Playboy bunny?
Yes.
She ended up marrying a psychiatrist, and I think that it's probably a perfect match. It gives him something to do during his off hours, and she finally feels understood.
Well, I hope you can stay with us for the last hour of the show. We're going up to the news in the AA right now. Hello, welcome back to London Country on BBC Radio London, 206 medium wave, that's your AM, and 1458 kilohertz, and stereo VHF, your FM 94.9. Hoyt Axton is my special guest, and every song on the program today is a Hoyt Axton song, and that was, of course, one of your best known, Della and the Dealer. Hope you did write it after that big mention. It is a great number.
I stole that from Barbra Streisand wrote that.
Of course you did, yes.
Yes, I did write that. I was trying to be cute, and obviously it didn't work.
No. Well, you didn't laugh at my joke earlier on.
No, I tried. You pushed the button.
Yes. I could see the lack of interest.
I told you the story about the... What's your title here? You know what I mean? What do you consider someone who plays... Is it a disc jockey?
No, we're presenters.
Presenters?
Yes.
Well, you heard the story about the fellow who was a little short on brains, and he went into a brain store, and he said, I need some brains. And the man in the store said, why, certainly, sir. What would you like? And he said, well, how much are those brains right there? And the storekeeper said, oh, those are medical surgeon's brains. Those are 100 pounds an ounce. He said, I see. And he said, how about those brains right over there? And the storekeeper said, oh, those are corporate solicitor's brains. Those are 200 pounds an ounce. He said, I see. And how much are those brains there? And he said, those are presenter's brains. Those are $400 an ounce. And the fellow said, wait a minute. He said, I can buy medical surgeon's brains for 100 pounds an ounce, and I can buy corporate solicitor's brains for 200 pounds an ounce, and you want 400 pounds an ounce for presenter's brains? And the storekeeper said, mister, Do you have any idea how many presenters it takes to get an album? I got you, Bobby.
Well,
you didn't like that.
Thanks for
That's
coming on the
a
show
funny
today.
joke.
Yeah.
Hey, come on. I heard it as musicians.
No, that's good.
If I told it like that, would you have liked it better?
I think that's good, actually. Of course, we call ourselves disc jockeys, not presenters. So
well, way to go, man.
That's good. But he didn't laugh at my jokes. I'm not going to laugh at his.
I tried.
Here's from a film which I enjoyed, actually, very much, called Outlaw Blues. Well, about 4 years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
And you wrote many of the songs. We hope to play 2 or 3 of them. 1977 has got written down here.
You can edit that joke out, you know. You probably will.
I've already done so, actually, even without moving from the desk. Peter
I'll
Fonda.
keep referring back to it.
That means we'll just have to overrun by 20 minutes, you know. Peter Fonda sang the song.
Okay.
Just he trying to get some semblance of order back in the program, without a great deal of success so far.
Now, here we go.
And he's not a bad singer, is he?
Peter, no, he's a nice guy.
I'm surprised you did sing. Actually, the strange thing is, you actually sang somebody else's song in here. Why did everyone do your songs and you do a Lee Clayton song?
Did I do a Lee Clayton song?
Yes, you did, called Whisper in the Velvet Night.
Well, this was supposed to be the soundtrack from a movie, but many of these songs were not in the soundtrack. But they felt the songs in the soundtrack were too weak for a soundtrack album. It's typical Hollywood logic, I'll tell you.
Right.
But we had a great time doing this stuff.
Was this Peter Fonda one in the film?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right, there we go. I'll explain what I meant while we're talking off air in a minute. Peter Fonda, and one which, now I'll ask you again, Hoyt, was that a soundtrack from the album, from the film?
No, I made a mistake a moment ago, Bob. It is not in the film. It's from the soundtrack album, yes, but the soundtrack album is not necessarily a soundtrack album. It's a Hollywood version of a soundtrack album.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, he does a good job, I think.
Yeah, he did a good job.
So, any story about that? I mean, it's an unusual title, Water for
My Horses?
Yeah.
Well, I sat down and I tried to write an old Desperado-type song, you know. And I just didn't feel that desperate that night. So I just wrote one that said, "The hell with desperation," you know. Give me some water for my horses and tell them where I went. I'm ready to shoot it out. So it's a Badlands cowboy song.
If I had to choose my favorite Hoyt Axton song, I guess this one would be, well, it would be definitely near the top, if not the top. And this version, again, it's a Three Dog Night song. Waylon Jennings is singing it. You know which one I mean?
Never Been to Spain.
Yeah, great song, I think.
That song took over 14 minutes to write.
It's getting worse. What gave you an idea there? I've never been to Spain.
I wrote this song at a party. I don't know, I'd been messing around with, now the guitar, I'd been messing around with an open-tuned guitar. It was open G tuning with the 5th and 6th strings on the guitar drone, you know, and which gave it a little more bass sound. And I'd just been playing around with that tuning, and I sat down one night and just, in the middle of a party, I don't know why, I just sat down and in 14, 15 minutes just wrote these words. They don't really mean anything. A lot of my songs are nonsensical. As a matter of fact, Rolling Stone magazine in the States once said that Three Dog Night took Hoyt Axton tunes out of the realm of unfocused silliness and put them in a proper musical perspective for the public to enjoy.
Good.
And I canceled my subscription after I read it.
It's heavy weather. But what do you think of Waylon's version? Or do you want to hear it before you answer that?
I'd like to hear it.
Never been to Spain, yeah. That I really like. Waylon Jennings, and he did do a good job there, Hoyt, didn't he, after listening to it?
By golly, he did a good job.
He really
I like Waylon. No, I like Waylon. I like him fine.
Yeah. Do you ever work with him, gigs or anything?
No, we've hung out together a few times.
Uh-huh.
You know, jammed, made late night music, and drank a little whiskey.
Except for your brilliant...
I'd sit around and leer at his old lady. That always seemed to bother him.
Yeah, she's worth leering at.
Yeah, she's a good-looking woman.
I was about to say, except for your brilliant albums on Youngblood, I have to say that with Jan overlooking here, he's even standing up. I think one of my favorites is Free Sailing on the MCA label by you. I think it's full of real goodies. Nice.
Thank you. That was the album that ended my career with MCA. But I enjoyed that album, and I had a good time recording it.
As String Bean used to say, it sold under 2 million copies, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Way under.
Well under 2 million. Somewhere between 250 copies and 2 million. I'm not sure.
It's great. Well, this one, I like it sort of, you could call it a controversial subject, Them Downers. What gave you the idea for this? Were you going through a
One
period?
of the singers in my band right here, Jana Lee Dare, and I've never really been into downers. I used to take a lot of speed, but I've never been into downers.
Okay.
So I just thought I'd write a song bad-mouthing downers. You notice I haven't written any songs bad-mouthing speed.
Here it is, Hoyt Axton, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yeah, there's a sound there, written by Hoyt Axton and sung by him, called Them Downers.
And I co-wrote that with one of the girls in the band, Jana Lee Dare.
Is she with you anymore?
Jana Lee? Yeah, she sings with me now.
Was she the one wearing the yellow outfit or...
I believe so, yeah.
Right. When we saw her at the bar.
I'll tell you what that song was all about. One time, CBS in the United States did an expose on the use and abuse of Valium, tranquilizer, in the United States. And one of the things, they talked about how a lot of housewives took it to kill the pain of being married to nerds and turkeys, you know. And I couldn't relate to that, having never been married to a nerd or a turkey. But they had one segment that was really great. It was on the U.S. Congress, the members of Congress. And it seems that 40% of the members of Congress in the United States take at least one Valium a day. And that's probably why they're ineffective. You know, I mean, someone could stand up in front of the House of Congress in the United States and say, Milwaukee has just been bombed. And half of them would just say, oh, yeah, wow. And think about,
Yeah, right.
I thought I'd share that information with you. A lot of
Thanks.
people don't know stuff like that.
We're going to go to one sort of related in a sense. Richard Starkey did on one of his albums.
Yeah, I was there at the session.
Were you there?
Yeah, I had a good time.
Did you sing on it or anything?
No, I didn't sing. I was too drunk and stoned.
And
No,
you were
that's a
talking
joke,
about this
that's a
song.
joke.
Was it? That's it.
Yeah, it's a joke.
The No-No song, you were talking about this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That
David Jackson and I co-wrote this after a night in Denver. We were performing in Denver. Yeah, it was one night that lasted for several nights.
how did you get the song to Ringo?
Richard Perry was a friend of mine. He was producing Ringo and Streisand and a number of other people at the time. And when we originally wrote the song, the melody was very close, although we didn't realize it at the time, being hungover. We didn't realize that the melody was lifted note for note from Obla-Di, Obla-Da. So Richard called me back and he said, Hoyt, we like the song, but the melody's very familiar. And I said, yeah, it's kind of universal, isn't it? He says it's too universal. He said it's Obla-Di, Obla-Da. And I said, yeah, I guess you're right. So I rewrote the melody, and Ringo liked it, and he cut it.
Well, there it is. You do that one on stage with your guitar player, wasn't it? Doing all sorts of strange things with cigars and things.
Mm-hmm.
But that was Ringo Starr's version, No song. You were saying, actually, it was number one in the pop charts, wasn't it?
It was number one in the pop charts in the States, yeah,
In
for
spite
1
of-
week.
Yeah, say what you said about when the record company rang up. It's a great story.
Well, that's a true story. I don't know how many record companies receive phone calls like this, but my favorite song on that particular album, Goodnight Vienna, was an Alan Toussaint song called Acapella. And pardon me, boys, but can you use da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? Good song. That was my favorite. So I called them up when they told me that Richard Perry had called to tell me that would be the next single. And so when I called Apple up, I said, you guys, I just thought I'd tell you that that's not the best song on the record. You ought to put the Alan Toussaint song out. Thank God they didn't take my advice.
He nearly threw away a hit there. Well, here's one. I don't know if he had it as a single or not, to be honest with you. I can't remember, but I think he does a great job. Johnny Cash singing one of your songs called In a Young Girl's Mind.
Yeah, which was co-written with my harmonica player, Mark Dawson.
Beautiful
Yeah.
song.
Thank you.
Do you do this one on stage?
Sometimes. We have two different versions, and never can decide which one to do.
I noticed, on the show you did in the Barbican, it was a very relaxed show. Do you do the same songs every night, or do you sort of change around? And
No, we change around. I'd say half the songs we do almost every night. And I like the organic freedom of a performance,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a live show, man. We ought to be able to change it around a little.
Do you listen to requests? When people shout out, Would you sort of...
Oh, yeah, I listen, and if I can remember them, and if I think that's the right time to do them, I'll go ahead and do them.
Right. Well, here's Johnny Cash doing one of your songs.
Well, thank you, Bob, and it's my pleasure to be here.
Well, we're going to have now, we're going to have another song by you again, but this time joined by a young lady called Tanya Tucker, with permission of Glenn Campbell, probably.
I don't believe they're together any longer.
No, they don't now.
And they were not together then. I think Tanya was 17 when we got this.
Really? As long as that? Gosh. How did you two meet? I've never known of your careers sort of overlapping at all.
I did a TV show back in 75, and Tanya was one of the guests on the show. I'll never forget her. She was so delectable.
Yeah, she was on this show when she was 17.
I mean, delightful.
Right. Well, she
delectable and delightful.
She used to be escorted by her mother everywhere, I noticed, when she came
she was escorted by her father that particular day. I'll never forget it. She was standing in front of me in tight leather pants, singing, wiggling, and singing. And directly in my line of eyesight were her hips. And I was behind her. And also the other side of her, 20 feet, was her father, Vo, with his arms crossed across his chest. And a look that could kill. And I'm trying not to look at his daughter's rear end wiggling in front of me in tight leather pants. And Bo knew I was... It was an interesting afternoon. That's how I met Tanya on that show.
And just then you thought, hey, it would be a good idea if we sang a song together.
Yeah, well, a few years later, no.
Right.
I shouldn't be crude and rude like that. I know it probably offends some people out there in radio land, but truth is truth. You know, you can have different perspectives on the same truth, but it doesn't alter the fact. You know what I mean, Bob.
I know what you mean. Well, shall we hear the song you wrote? You Taught Me How to Cry.
I'd love to.
Hoyt Axton and the lady with a great voice. Oh, you two, your voices blend, actually. That's Tanya Tucker and our special guest here in London Country, Hoyt Axton. Moving quickly from there, we're going to have go from one duet to another.
All right.
Glenn Campbell and Anne Marie.
What about them?
Well, they did one of your songs. Called
They did a fine job on it, too.
Ease Your Pain. So
and that's one of my better songs when I was feeling charitable and altruistic.
How long did it take you to write it?
This song, I probably worked on this song for 3 or 4 months off and on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, then that's a world record for you, isn't it?
Oh, no.
You were being facetious with your
2 years. Yeah.
Really? What's your 2-year song?
It was the thing called Gypsy Moth.
Don't think I know it, do I?
Gypsy Moth is a mighty high flyer sailing on the inland sea.
Yeah, when I said that, Valerie was... Val, you know it, Val, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I wrote 2 verses to it and then couldn't find anything that was good enough to go ahead and finish it up.
Oh, all right. What album is it on? You know, we'll
I don't remember.
I'll see if I can find it while Ease Your Pain's playing. How's that?
All right.
Yeah, Glenn Campbell and Anne Murray doing a song written by our special guest on London Country here, Hoyt Axton, and Ease Your Pain. They did do a nice job.
They did a great job. I've recorded that song twice myself on 2 different projects, and neither time have I ever felt like I did a good job.
There are
I
some
really
songs,
liked the job they did on it.
there are some songs like that on. You keep doing them and doing it, and you know they're going. Well, thanks to Valerie, actually, who was more familiar with the song than I was. We found your 2-year song, the song that took 2 years to do, Gypsy Moth. Have you seen our Gypsy Moth in the boat that went around the world? You've seen it in Greenwich, in South London.
Chichester, right?
Francis Chichester,
Sir
right?
Francis
The late Sir
Chichester.
Francis Chichester. You're absolutely right. Hoyt Axton. A different, yeah, Gypsy Moth by Hoyt Axton here on London Country. Took you 2 years to write. And I see you only did it just with your guitar. Why
Nobody
that?
else wanted to play on it. No, that's from my old folk music days. You know, I was a folk singer for 10 years. Just worked solo with the guitar.
You've become actually more and more country with each succeeding album. Is this a conscious thing? At least I think you have.
I don't know. It's pretty well full circle. You know, I was reared in Oklahoma, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. I was around country music all my life.
And we're really not going to have time to, and I hope one of these days to have you on the show. I know that the program before me, Stuart Coleman's Echoes has had your mother on the program when you came over to play Portsmouth. But, of course, she's written Heartbreak Hotel, and I've got a Hank Snow record that she wrote.
She's had probably 100 songs recorded in the United States.
As much as that? Gosh. So, how many have you had? You must be approaching her limit, I should think.
Well, I've made so many albums that I'm over 100 songs. But
yeah, right. I'm talking about other people.
Mostly, yeah. By other people, I have no idea.
Right. Well, here's one that you might even know. Johnny Darrell, who to me is a great talent who seems to have been wasted a bit. Snowblind Friend, he recorded of yours.
All right.
On
That's an anti-speed song.
Right, another one. And it was the title of one of your many albums. How many albums have you actually recorded?
25.
Really? Well, separate and not best of or any of those? Just 25 actual?
25 separate albums, yeah.
That's all
Most
recording.
of the early ones are not available. They were on little labels that went broke, you know.
Do you have them yourself?
No.
The only artist I've ever met who said yes to that question is Hank Snow. He's got everything he's ever done. And he's the only one. None of you always give the last one, well, I'll always get one,
Yeah.
You end up without any, right? That's strange, isn't it? Do you wish you had them?
I really don't listen to Hoyt Axton that much. Maybe I should. It might give me some feeling of continuity, you know.
I know what you mean, though. Do you listen to a lot of other people's on the radio? You know, are you a button?
I'm an individual song fan. I'm a song fan more than an artist fan. And well, if I hear 2 or 3 songs that I really enjoy from the same artist, I become a fan of that person just like everybody else.
Who's in that category at the moment? Must be somebody. If you had to go and see someone live, who would it be at the moment?
Well, Linda Ronstadt, but she doesn't write her own stuff.
Right.
The last person I went to see live was Willie Nelson tonight.
Right. Well, we recorded this anyway.
Before that, I'll tell you, I work about 310 or 20 days a year.
Yeah.
And I get to work with a lot of other people, so I watch their performances. But when I'm off, I really don't go out to shows.
There's no one that's particularly impressed you at the moment who mightn't even be that well known at the moment. You know, someone.
Well, no, I like John Denver.
Right.
I really do. I like the way he sings and the way he writes. Golly, I really don't know. I can't think, Bob. You stumped me.
Okay, well, if you think of it while this record's playing, we could bring it up, or on the other hand, we could never mention the subject again. Here's Johnny Darrell. Johnny Darrell there, doing, I think, a nice version of a song which was the title track of one of your own albums, Snowblind Friend.
I agree. That is a good job.
Yeah, in fact, a friend of mine who is a Nashville session man now called Greg Galbraith has put this album as one of his favorite all-time country albums. And long deleted, but it's a Johnny Darrell album called California Stopover, and very good it is too. Sort of cold weather. We're going to go to Rose Maddox of the Maddox Brothers and Rose in the old days. I don't know, did you ever grow up listening to their music and their strange sort of pranks on stage and all that type of thing? Do you remember them?
Mm-hmm.
And she did an album, a track of yours, Lion in the Winter. So did a couple of British groups, actually. One of them called their album that. So a lot of people recorded this song.
I didn't know that. I've heard Rose's version, though. I like it.
Yeah. Shall we hear it? Ah, yeah, Rose Maddox and Lion in the Winter. Well, Snowblind Friend and Lion in the Winter. I mean, did you write these in cold weather or any connection?
I wrote Snowblind Friend in response to A Wasted Life. My old guitar player named Steve Mann. He at one time was the chess champion of Northridge, Cal State College at Northridge, California. Then he got into drugs, and last time I saw him, he was hanging onto a lamppost talking to himself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote that song in response to that. Lion in the Winter I wrote, which originally was a duet with Linda Ronstadt, my version of it. I wrote that for my second wife. She's a wealthy divorcee living in Oregon.
You said that on stage. That's true, is it? I see. You're going to say anything more about this segment? It did intrigue me when you said that, actually. Well, she sort of did better than your first ex-wife out of the whole deal, did you?
Yeah, she did much better.
You're not going to say much more about her, are you?
Nope.
I thought you wouldn't. You've been now, well, I guess full-time in the music business, 15, 20 years. I
started in March of '61.
Not a bad guess. Did you find it exciting now still, or does it get old to you?
No, I love it.
You do?
It continually changes, and it's been getting better and better. I don't deserve how wonderful my life has been, but I'm not going to argue with it.
What about your records now? I suppose it's true to say you haven't had a smash amount of number ones yourself, have you?
Never had one.
Right. Now, this is amazing because, I mean, you're very, very well known, and people come to see you. It's a bit like David Allan Coe. He's exactly the same, isn't he? I mean, he sells well. Mm-hmm. Not quite as well as he tells people, but he sells well. And yet he's never had a single hit. Is this because radio stations don't play your stuff very much in the States, or can you explain?
No, they play them quite a bit.
Why is it then that your records...
I have no idea, and I don't even think about it. I really don't worry about it. I'll tell you something, Bob. I've been in this business for 21 years. I have never had a career plan. I like it like that. What I like is, I started out to make music, and that's what I'm still doing. I really enjoy doing it.
Are you into sort of the Irish and the Scottish ballads and all that, or is that just sort of...
I used to hang out with the Clancy brothers and Tommy Macomb, and I love the Chieftains. I think they're a great group.
I've never...
But I'm also into old English folk songs.
Oh.
Like Dylan's "Ye Masters of War" is based on a song that came out of the 12th century, probably one of the oldest songs in England, called Nottingham Town. Supposedly being sung from the perspective of a German mercenary whom John had hired when he usurped the throne and Richard had gone away to the Crusades and all that.
All right, Hoyt, I tell you what, let's stay on sort of the folk kick with one of your biggest hits, actually. I know you had it as a huge hit for the Kingston Trio, but we're going to have a country version here by Hanson Cargill. It's, of course, Hanson Cargill there on London Country and Greenback Dollar, a biggie that, of course, made a fortune for you, Hoyt Axton, didn't it?
Golly, yes, Bob.
You sometimes didn't do the smartest publishing deals, I get the impression, in the early days.
No, that particular song, well, I didn't know anything. I was living in a car when I wrote that song.
Right.
And doing, actually we wrote that in a laundromat. There were 4 or 5 of us pooled our money so we could also buy wine and bread and cheese and do our laundry and play music. And I don't believe I ever received the money that I should have, but that's showbiz,
Well, in spite of that, we're going to play it again, and this time to go out with Glenn Campbell and Rodney Dillard, or Doug Dillard and banjo, and a lot of other people. An album called The Folk Swingers. Hoyt, I really enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much indeed for spending the last hour and a half with us in London Country.
Thank you, Bob, and I appreciate the time you spent, and I appreciate the time you spend playing my music.
My pleasure. And thanks to Jan Olafson of Youngblood Records.
And thanks to Valerie for supplying the ice water. This could be the last ice in England that I've been
True.
making.
That was a strange noise we were hearing a record 2 back. Bob Powell saying, I'll see you same time next week with London Country. Thanks for listening.